is the correct version of the Iron Throne?
Yeah, I mean, I state repeatedly in the book that the Iron Stone is huge. Huge. It towers over the room like a great beast, and it's ugly. It's asymmetric. It was put together by blacksmiths, not by craftsmen and experts in furniture manufacture. And you have to walk up iron steps, and when a king sits on it, he's like 10 feet above everybody else in the hall. So he's in this raised position looking down on him. And the hall itself is huge.
And the throne is made of the swords of the defeated enemies.
Yeah, the throne is made of all the swords. You know, during Aegon's conquest, when people surrendered to them, they set down their sword as a series of submission. And of course, when he won a battle by burning everybody, there were all these burned, melted swords lying around. So he gathered all of them up and he gave them and said, "Make a throne out of this." And that's what they did. And it's a sign of dominance and conquest. And when you stand before it, you're supposed to remember that, you know. "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Was a little bit of the psychology of that, but nobody ever got it right. I mean, there were comic book versions, and there were versions in the card game and the board game, and there were versions on the cover, and there were versions that were done for conventions. You know, the very first, there was a wooden one that I sat on in 1996 at the ABA that looked like the embossed version on the first edition, the Silver Book, but none of them were ever really right. The closest one who ever came was Marc Simonetti, the French artist. And even his first one wasn't right, but since he was the closest, I worked with him, and then we got him for this book, and he and I went back a half dozen times to finally get something I could say, yeah, this is absolutely right. Now, of course, you can't do this in a TV show. It's not something I criticize HBO for or something like that. I mean, the thrones they have are enormously large and cumbersome to move and expensive to build. To build this monstrosity would blow the budget of an entire episode, and it wouldn't fit in the set. I mean, our throne room is in the Paint Hall in Belfast in Northern Ireland. Now, the Paint Hall is the largest soundstage in Europe. It was originally part of the old Harland and Wolff shipyard where they built the Titanic, and they painted the ships. The hulls of the ships in this hall, which gives you the idea of the scale of it. And we've divided it into a number of pods, and our throne room is in one of them. And it's a very large set, but it's not large enough. You would need St. Paul's Cathedral. If they would give us St. Paul's Cathedral or Westminster Abbey to shoot in, and a year to build a giant throne like that that would dominate the entire thing and go halfway to the ceiling, then you could get the Iron Throne the way it's described in the books. But this is the difference between books and television. You know, I can say, well, that the wall is 700 feet high, but I don't actually have to build a 700-foot high wall or a giant throne made of nasty-looking swords here. It's interesting. There's actually a terrific speech that Littlefinger gives in last season, where he talks about the Iron Throne made from 1,000 thrones of Aegon's enemies, and then he said, I counted them once, and really there's only 137, and you know, it's when truth and legend disagree, print a legend. And it's an interesting speech that's true in the show, but it's not true in the books because there really are thousands of swords in the real Iron Throne, the gigantic Iron Throne that sits in King's Landing in the books.
It reminds me a little bit of Tamerlane was supposedly made a huge pile of his defeated enemies' skulls as a monument to his greatness, and that's what this has always reminded me of. It's great to see it.
Yeah, that was a tradition among many conquerors, the Pyramid of Skulls.
Yeah.
It's, you know, one of those things you can always go back to. The old traditions are good.